Most men misunderstand attraction at a very basic level. They assume it's driven mainly by appearance, money, confidence, or the perfect things to say at the right moment. But in reality, what creates genuine attraction runs much deeper than surface level performance. There are subtle, almost invisible shifts in how a woman responds to a man that have nothing to do with scripted lines or outward charm. These shifts happen internally, in a space where emotion, intuition, and subconscious evaluation overlap. And most of the time, men completely miss them. One of the strongest indicators of this hidden emotional shift comes through touch. Not touch in a general sense, but specific kinds of physical closeness that only become possible when something has already changed inside her perception of you. It's not random and it's not meaningless. It reflects a deeper level of comfort, trust, and emotional openness that builds quietly over time. When a woman allows certain forms of closeness, it often signals that her internal guard has softened. Her nervous system is no longer interpreting you as unknown or uncertain. Instead, there is a growing sense of familiarity and safety. At that stage, her reactions become less defensive and more receptive, not because she is forcing it, but because her instincts are recalibrating how she experiences your presence. This is where most men misinterpret everything. They treat all forms of physical interaction as equal, without understanding that emotional weight changes depending on context, timing, and connection. A simple gesture can carry no meaning in one moment and deep significance in another, depending on the emotional foundation underneath it. What matters is not the action itself, but the state of mind behind it. Human perception is highly sensitive to intention. When someone enters your personal space or allows you into theirs, the subconscious mind is constantly scanning for cues: safety, pressure, comfort, hesitation, or ease. These signals are processed long before logic ever gets involved. This is why attraction cannot be forced or manufactured. It develops through accumulation of small, unconscious confirmations that build a sense of trust. When those confirmations align, emotional resistance starts to fade naturally. And when it doesn't, no amount of effort or technique can override it. Within this framework, there are different levels of emotional accessibility. Some areas of interaction are neutral and socially common, while others are far more intimate and reserved for deeper levels of comfort. As emotional trust increases, the boundaries around these levels begin to shift. At the earliest stage, interactions remain polite, controlled, and distant. There is awareness, but also caution. As familiarity grows, that caution slowly decreases, replaced by ease and natural flow. Small gestures become more relaxed, conversation feels less filtered, and physical distance may subtly reduce without either person consciously deciding it. The mistake many men make is assuming these shifts mean immediate emotional depth. In reality, they are gradual indicators of comfort, not guarantees of emotional attachment. Comfort is only one layer of attraction, not the full structure. As things develop further, there may be moments where physical closeness feels more natural, not because it is being tested or performed, but because it no longer feels intrusive to her internal sense of boundaries. At this stage, her body language often reveals more than her words ever will. Micro reactions, pauses, and ease of movement become more important than anything explicitly said. This is where emotional intelligence becomes essential. People who understand these dynamics don't rush to conclusions. They observe patterns, they pay attention to consistency rather than isolated moments. They understand that genuine connection is not defined by a single gesture, but by the overall direction of comfort and openness over time. It's also important to understand that touch in itself is never just physical. The brain processes it through layers of emotional interpretation. It evaluates tone, timing, familiarity, and perceived intention within milliseconds. That means the same action can feel completely different depending on the emotional environment surrounding it. When the emotional environment is calm, safe, and naturally connected, even simple gestures feel effortless. When it is uncertain or forced, even minor contact can feel misaligned. This is not something that can be manipulated through technique alone. It comes from the overall dynamic between two people. A key misunderstanding is the idea that there is a secret signal that unlocks attraction. In reality, there is no single point or gesture that determines everything. Human connection doesn't operate like a switch. It operates like a continuum, where trust either builds or breaks down based on repeated interactions. However, there are moments within that continuum that reveal a lot about direction. When resistance decreases and comfort increases, it reflects a shift in how someone internally categorizes you. You move from unfamiliar to familiar, from cautious to accepted, and potentially from neutral to emotionally significant. But even then, nothing is guaranteed or fixed. Human emotions are fluid. They respond to context, time, and experience. What feels open in one moment can change if trust is broken or if consistency disappears. That's why the real focus should never be on trying to decode or control signals. It should be on understanding patterns of comfort, respect, and mutual ease. Those are far more reliable indicators of genuine connection than any isolated gesture ever will be. At the deeper level, attraction is not about finding the right move. It is about becoming someone whose presence does not create tension, but instead creates a sense of grounding. Someone who is not forcing connection, but allowing it to develop naturally. This perspective changes everything. It removes pressure, reduces misinterpretation, and replaces guessing with awareness. Instead of searching for hidden signs to decode, you begin to understand the broader emotional language that people express without words. And once you see connection through that lens, you stop overvaluing individual moments and start recognizing the real thing: consistent emotional ease, mutual comfort, and the gradual unfolding of trust over time. Most people misunderstand attraction at a very shallow level. They assume it's built from appearance, wealth, confidence, or the ability to say the right things at the right time. But real human connection doesn't work like that. It develops in quieter ways, through patterns of comfort, emotional safety, and subconscious trust that build over time. There's a tendency online to oversimplify this process into signals or hidden tricks, as if attraction can be decoded like a formula. But in reality, what people feel is far more complex than any single action or gesture. One of the most misunderstood areas of this topic is physical touch. Many assume that touch has fixed meanings, like one specific action automatically proving deep emotional attachment. But that's not how human psychology works. There is no single point on the body, no secret trigger, and no universal gesture that reveals everything someone is feeling. What actually matters is context. Touch is interpreted by the brain through layers of emotional processing, timing, familiarity, comfort level, mutual trust, and the overall dynamic between two people. The same simple gesture can feel completely neutral in one situation and deeply meaningful in another, depending entirely on what has been built between them before that moment. When someone begins to feel comfortable around another person, their behavior changes gradually. They become more relaxed in conversation, less guarded in posture, and more natural in how they respond. This is not a conscious decision. It's the nervous system adjusting based on perceived safety. This is where many people misread things. They look for a single sign that supposedly reveals everything, when in reality, what matters is the overall direction of the connection. Is comfort increasing over time, or is tension still present? Is communication becoming easier, or is it still forced and cautious? Those patterns matter far more than isolated moments. In early interactions, physical boundaries are usually firm and clearly defined. Most contact stays minimal and socially conventional, like a handshake or brief neutral proximity. At this stage, the brain is still evaluating safety and trust, so everything is filtered through caution. As familiarity develops, those boundaries may soften slightly. Small, casual gestures can begin to feel more natural, like a light touch on the arm during conversation or standing closer without discomfort. These changes don't indicate surrender or deep emotional commitment. They simply reflect increasing comfort and reduced tension. If that comfort continues to grow, interactions may feel more effortless. People laugh more easily, eye contact becomes longer, and physical space feels less rigid. These shifts are subtle but meaningful because they show a growing sense of ease, not because of any single action, but because of repeated positive experiences. It's important to understand that touch itself is not a code with fixed definitions. Human beings don't assign universal emotional meanings to specific body parts or gestures. Instead, the brain constantly evaluates intention and emotional safety. A gesture that feels warm and respectful in one context can feel uncomfortable in another if trust hasn't been established. This is why psychology research often emphasizes perception over action. Studies in social neuroscience show that the brain reacts to touch based on emotional context and relational history, not just physical contact itself. The same form of contact can activate completely different emotional responses depending on who is involved and what level of trust exists between them. In other words, meaning is not in the touch, it is in the relationship. A helpful way to understand this is to think of interaction as layers rather than signals. At the surface layer, there is simple social behavior, conversation, politeness, general interaction. Beneath that is familiarity, shared jokes, relaxed communication, reduced tension. Deeper still is emotional trust, consistency, comfort, and openness. Physical closeness only becomes meaningful as these layers deepen, not because of a specific spot or gesture, but because the overall emotional foundation supports it. This is also where misunderstandings often happen. Some people try to interpret every small gesture as a hidden message, when in reality, most human behavior is not symbolic. It is situational. People respond based on how they feel in that exact moment, not according to hidden rules or fixed meanings. That's why focusing on decoding signals can be misleading. It turns something fluid and human into something mechanical, when in reality, connection is built through consistency, not analysis. Touch, in its healthiest form, is simply an extension of comfort. It reflects how safe and relaxed someone feels in your presence. If that comfort is not there, the body naturally resists closeness. If it is there, closeness feels effortless and unforced. There is no hidden switch behind it, just gradual emotional alignment over time. The real insight is not about finding secret meanings in gestures, but about understanding how trust develops in stages. People don't reveal everything through one action. They reveal themselves slowly through patterns, how they communicate, how they respond under comfort or stress, and how consistently safe they feel in your presence. When you stop looking for shortcuts and start paying attention to consistency, everything becomes clearer. You stop overanalyzing isolated moments and start recognizing the actual structure of connection, slow, layered, and built on emotional safety rather than symbolic interpretation. That is what most people miss. Not a hidden signal, but the simple truth that real connection cannot be reduced to one gesture, one moment, or one point of meaning. It is always the sum of everything that came before it.